I've been able to see ghosts since I was a child. I can't speak to them, only watch on our 5th wedding anniversary. I prepared a whole table of food and waited for my husband Adrian to come home. When I looked up, I saw his ghost. He was curled up in the corner of our penthouse living room, his face deathly pale and gray, staring at me intently. I felt like I'd been plunged into a frozen lake, trembling. I reached for my phone, wanting to call him. Before I could dial, the front door opened. Adrian walked in and hugged me gently, like always. "Sorry, darling, I got held up at the lab." He held me in his arms. I heard his familiar heartbeat against my ear, warm and steady. I closed my eyes and told myself, he's alive. But when I opened them, again, the spirit in the corner was still there. My heart sank, piece by piece. If Adrian was already dead, then who was this person wearing his face and embracing me? I stared hard at his face. I've been looking at that face for 20 years. From the day we met in the university library until we got married, he'd been by my side every single day. Now I was watching with my own eyes as a ghost, with his exact face curled up in the corner. My whole body trembled. For a long time, I couldn't make a sound. "Clara, what's wrong?" He walked over and placed his hand on my forehead. "Why are you sweating so much? Do you have a fever?" His eyes were full of concern, his warm palm pressed against my skin. I startled and stumbled back a step. The movement was too sudden and knocked over a crystal glass on the table. Water spilled everywhere. He froze his hands, suspended in midair, looking at me helplessly, with a trace of hurt in his eyes. "Clara, what's going on?" I forcibly suppressed the panic in my heart. If the ghost in the corner was the real him, then who was this person in front of me? I absolutely couldn't tip my hand. I took a deep breath and forced out a smile. Nothing I said, trying to sound casual. "Come eat. The food's getting cold." I sat down and picked up a piece of roasted salmon with my fork. He ladled me a bowl of soup and took out a bottle of champagne. "From the wine fridge. I came home late today." Let me apologize first. I looked at the pale golden liquid in the glass and spoke as casually as I could. "Do you remember that time we snuck into the Botanical Gardens, after hours?" He paused for a moment, then smiled. "How could I forget that night? You insisted on seeing the night blooming Sirius. I couldn't talk you out of it. We climbed the gate, and you tore your dress. Then my hand holding the fork trembled slightly, and you lost your shoe in the pond. I had to fish it out with a branch." He shook his head. "I didn't dare tell the security guard it was your idea. I just took the blame when they caught us." My heart tightened. Only the two of us knew about this. "What was I wearing that night I pressed on? A blue sundress? You ripped the hem on the gate, and I tried to fix it with a safety pin from my backpack, but I poked your leg instead." He reached down and rubbed a small spot above my knee. "There's still a tiny scar right here." I smiled and ruffled my hair. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" I lowered my eyes without answering. He even remembered this tiny detail. I glanced at the ghost in the corner. He was still staring at me. My heart lifted slightly. No, this wasn't enough. I cleared my throat and looked back at him. "Speaking with slight embarrassment today, your mother called and said she's craving that lemon rosemary cake I used to make. He picked up a piece of salmon for me. Okay, I'll bake it tomorrow and take it to her." "You'll bake it." I looked up at him. He laughed. "Haven't I always been the one who bakes it? Back then you tried to learn how to make that cake and nearly melted the stand mixer. I ended up mastering it. Instead, I burned 2 fingers the first time I made. You accidentally used paprika instead of cinnamon. After you tasted it, your whole face scrunched up, but you still stubbornly said it was delicious. I thought to myself, this wife of mine is really adorable. You even told my mother you made it yourself?" He shook his head. "Then my mom bragged about your baking to her bridge club. I didn't dare expose you. Don't worry, I'll handle it." He patted the back of my hand. I said nothing more. All the details matched up perfectly, but the ghost was still there. Could my eyes really be playing tricks on me? Impossible. I've been able to see ghosts since childhood. I'd never been wrong about this before. After dinner, he put on an apron and went into the kitchen. I followed and leaned against the doorframe, observing him carefully. His movements, handling the ingredients, his technique, applying the seasonings, even his posture when sprinkling salt. Everything was exactly the same as years ago. The familiar aroma drifted from the kitchen. He turned back and smiled at me. "Go, sit down. It'll be ready soon." I didn't move. When the cake was out of the oven, I tasted a bite. The flavor was identical. "Is it good?" He leaned over, his eyes bright as he looked at me. I nodded. "Yeah, same taste as always. He smiled and packed the cake into a container to put in the fridge. Then he took my hand. All right, it's been a long day. Let's go rest. I leaned into his embrace. His body temperature came through his clothes, his steady breathing brushing against my ear. Okay. I closed my eyes. Whether you're human or ghost, I will find out the truth. I followed him into the bedroom. The ghost in the corner followed us in too. I looked away, not daring to look again. Adrian made the bed and patted the pillow. Come, lie down. You're tired today. Get some rest early. I lay down beside him. He reached over to turn off the light, leaving only a small nightlight by the bed. Clara, he turned on his side to look at me. You've had something on your mind lately. No. I stared at the ceiling. Just a bit tired from work. He held my hand. If you're tired, take a break. I'll take care of you. His palm was warm, his voice gentle. My throat tightened as I glanced again at that lonely spirit in the corner. Do you still remember this bracelet I picked up? A delicate silver bracelet from the nightstand? He glanced at it and smiled. Of course I remember. I gave it to you for your 21st birthday. I saved up my internship stipend for 3 months to buy it. The jeweler said it was one of a kind, and I was terrified someone else would snatch it up. My heart clenched. He was right. Do you remember what you wrote on the card when you gave it to me? I continued pressing. This bracelet is for you. Happy birthday. His face reddened slightly. Actually, I wanted to write, I'm in love with you, but I didn't have the nerve. How did I respond? You didn't. The next day you left a box of macarons on my desk. I was so elated, I couldn't focus in class all day. I closed my eyes. All correct. He reached over and took the bracelet, pointing to the tiny engraving on the inside. Always you. I even scratched my thumb. Engraving this? He extended his thumb. There was a faint scar on the pad. Then why haven't you worn this bracelet all this time? My voice trembled. You said you couldn't bear to. You wanted to wait until our 10th anniversary. I took a deep breath and put the bracelet back on the nightstand, lying down as casually as I could. You have such a good memory. You remember things from so many years ago. He smiled and ruffled my hair. How could I forget anything about you? I lowered my eyes, but my heart felt like it had a thorn in it. He was right. He remembered everything. But how could I explain the ghost in the corner? I turned on my side. Since your memory is so good, I stared at him. Let me test you. Do you remember when we went hiking as students? He thought for a moment. I remember the trail was steep, and you wanted to climb the rock face without a harness, and you nearly slipped off the cliff. I grabbed your wrist and pulled you back. You were so pale. I watched Adrian's face, nervously afraid to miss even the slightest expression. I was the one who nearly slipped back then. He was the one who saved me. If he went, along with my version, he would be fake. He paused for a moment, then suddenly tapped my forehead with his finger. Are you daydreaming? You were the one who nearly slipped. I pulled you back. You shook for an hour afterward. I opened my mouth, unable to refute. Do you remember our first time at the opera? I continued. He looked at me blankly. We've never been to the opera. Don't you remember? You always said you wanted to see La Traviata, but we never got tickets. My whole body went cold. He was right again. I really had never been to the opera, just said I wanted to go. Also, I had a golden retriever when I was little named Rusty. My voice tightened my tone, becoming somewhat urgent. He frowned. You've never had a dog. When you were 10, you got chased by a stray, and you've been terrified of dogs ever since you cross the street whenever you see one. I couldn't say another word. Every lie he could precisely identify. Sleep. Stop thinking nonsense. He pulled the blanket over and wrapped me in his arms. You've been acting strange today. I leaned against his chest and heard his heartbeat. I'm sorry, I said softly. Nothing. I closed my eyes. He turned over, habitually draping his arm over my waist, naturally pulling me into his embrace, exactly the same as before. I opened my eyes and locked gazes with the ghost in the corner. My mind was in chaos. Who should I believe? This went on for several days. I still had no clue, feeling like a stone was pressing on my heart until one morning Adrian was knotting his tie. He glanced at me in the mirror. Didn't sleep well again last night. Yeah, I rubbed my eyes, looking exhausted. Had dreams all night. He turned around, fastened the last button, and walked over to sit on the edge of the bed. Clara, I need to tell you something. I booked a couple's trip to Santorini before I wanted to surprise you. He held my hand, but there's an emergency at the biotech campus, and I can't get away. You go first, and I'll join you in 4 days. I froze. He'd never let me travel, far alone before. Why so suddenly? You've been so exhausted lately. He smiled and ruffled my hair. Go relax. I'll fly over as soon as I finish up. My heart stirred. This was a good opportunity to test him. I nodded. Okay. He turned to pack my luggage. I followed and leaned against the doorframe. He took out my favorite linen dress from the closet and folded it neatly. Then he stuffed sunscreen, a sun hat, common medications, and even the silk sleep mask I usually used into the suitcase one by one. It's warm there. Pack more light clothes. Don't get dehydrated. Use the aloe gel if you burn. He chatted on without stopping. Your stomach gets upset easily. So I bought some ginger chews to put in your bag. Eat them if you feel nauseous. I watched his busy figure, my eyes getting a bit teary. He even remembered these details. Also that novel you said you wanted to read. I downloaded it to your tablet. You can read it on the flight if you get restless. He turned back and smiled at me. I lowered my eyes. The more meticulous he was, the more I felt like a monster for her doubting him. Seeing me standing in the doorway without reacting, Adrian waved his hand in front of my face. All right, stop dawdling. He zipped up the suitcase. I'll take you to the airfield. He came over, took my hand, and pulled me out the door. I looked back at the spirit in the corner and noticed he didn't follow. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Good. It must just be my hallucination. My eyes must be the problem. All the way there, Adrian held my hand, chatting idly. I looked out the window, my mind in turmoil. At the private airfield, he helped me check in and stuffed the boarding pass in my hand. Call me when you land, okay? He hugged me, his chin resting on my shoulder. Have a wonderful time. I walked through security and looked back at him. He stood outside the glass door waving at me. My nose tingled. He was so good to me, yet I kept doubting him. I closed my eyes and made a secret vow. This is the last time I'll never doubt him again. On the plane, I deliberately chose a window seat. After takeoff, I looked out the window. Still, no ghost following. The weight on my heart finally lifted. I'd have to make time to get a neurological exam. After forcibly suppressing the lingering unease deep in my heart, I opened the book he downloaded for me to distract myself. After landing, I immediately turned on my phone and sent him a message. Arrived safely, don't worry. He replied instantly. Have fun. Wait for me. I stared at the screen and smiled. The scenery in Santorini was breathtaking. I sent him photos every day. Whitewashed cliffs, sapphire domes, crimson sunsets. He replied instantly to every one, his tone as gentle as always. During our video call at night, he leaned back on the sofa in warm amber light. Where did you go today? Sailing, I said, lying on the bed. When are you coming? It's lonely here without you. Soon, he smiled. Didn't you always want to see the caldera? Back in graduate school, you said our honeymoon had to be here. I remembered. I froze. That was something I'd said casually years ago. I'd almost forgotten it myself. You still remember I told you. How could I forget anything about you? His eyes were bright. My nose tingled. He got up to pour water. The phone camera shook slightly. In that instant, I saw a blurry shadow standing in the hallway behind him. The ghost had appeared again, staring hard at Adrian, with an unreadable expression. My whole body went cold. Clara, what's wrong? He came back with a water glass. Bad signal. I forced out a smile. I'm exhausted today. I'm going to hang up. After hanging up, I opened the flight app with trembling hands. The nearest flight back was in 2 hours. Before boarding, I dialed his number. No answer. My heart sank hard. He never ignored my calls. It was early morning when I landed. I rushed home. The lights were off. He wasn't there. The ghost wasn't there either. I could only open my phone's location tracker and found he was at a private medical facility outside the city. I drove there like a madwoman. The medical center was sleek and modern, hidden among pine forests. The corridor was long, the lights blindingly white. The soles of my sandals squeaked against the polished concrete, a harsh, rhythmic sound that sliced through the heavy silence. The smell of antiseptic and ozone clung to the back of my throat, sharp and metallic. I looked down at my phone. The blue GPS dot pulsed steadily. It was pointing towards the end of the hallway, past the standard rooms behind, a set of heavy glass doors marked Restricted Access Neurological Preservation Wing. My chest heaved. The air felt thin, barely enough to fill my lungs. I pushed past the doors. No one stopped me. The reception desk in this wing was empty. A single monitor flickering with a screensaver that cast long, cold shadows across the floor. The tracker led me to room 206. The door had a small glass window. I stood before it, my hand hovering over the silver handle, trembling so violently that my fingernails tapped against the metal. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and looked inside. The room was bathed in the pale, sterile glow of medical monitors. A network of thin, transparent tubes and wires coiled like vines around a hospital bed. And there, lying on the bed, was Adrian. He was gaunt. His cheeks were hollowed out. His skin, a translucent, sickly gray that looked almost yellow under the fluorescent lights. His hair, usually so thick and neatly styled, was thin and dry. A ventilator mask was strapped to his face, fogging up with every slow, mechanical breath forced into his lungs. This was the face of the ghost I had seen curled in the corner of my living room. My knees buckled. I had to press my palm against the doorframe to keep from collapsing. If this was Adrian, the physical dying husk of the man I loved, then who had I been living with? Who had packed my bags? Who had held me in the dark and whispered that everything would be all right? Clara. A voice startled me from behind. I spun around my heart, hammering against my ribs. Standing there was Dr. Elaine Hartley, Adrian's research partner at Kane Biotech, where he had served as CEO and chief scientist for the last 8 years. Dr. Hartley looked exhausted. Dark circles bagged under her eyes, and her white lab coat was wrinkled and stained with coffee. I choked out, my voice sounding small, like dry paper scraping together. What is this? Why is Adrian here? What did you do to him, Dr. Hartley sighed, a long, defeated sound. She looked at the door of room 206, then back at me. You weren't supposed to come back from Santorini for another 3 days. Clara, Adrian went to great lengths to make sure you wouldn't be here for this. For what I stepped closer, grabbing the lapels of her coat, my voice rose, cracking with hysteria. Who is at my house? Who is wearing his face? Tell me. Let's step into my office, Dr. Hartley said quietly, her hand gently but firmly guiding me away from the glass door. Please, I will explain everything you deserve to know, even if we tried to spare you from it. The office was cluttered with medical journals, brain scans pinned to light boxes, and half-empty mugs of cold coffee. Dr. Hartley shut the door, blocking out the steady, mocking beep of the heart monitors from the hallway. She pulled out a chair for me, but I remained standing, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. 8 months ago, Adrian was diagnosed with an aggressive, fatal, neurodegenerative prion disease. Dr. Hartley, began her voice, flat, drained of emotion. He kept it from you. He didn't want you to watch him deteriorate. You know how he is, how he's always been. He spent his whole life trying to protect you from the dark parts of the world. My mind flashed back to our university days, to the time he saved me from the hiking accident, the time he took the blame for the botanical garden break, and the way he always stood between me and whatever threatened to hurt me. He was working on the neural continuity project. Dr. Hartley continued, pointing to a series of complex brain diagrams on the wall. It was highly classified, funded by private medical tech investors. The goal is to map human consciousness, memories, personality traits, cognitive pathways, and transfer them into a biosynthetic neural network, a living, breathing replica printed from the donor's own DNA. I felt the room tilt a clone, an advanced biosynthetic construct. Dr. Hartley corrected softly. The technology is still in its infancy. The physical body, the vessel, takes months to grow in a specialized vat. But the memory mapping can only be done in the final stages of the donor's cognitive decline. Adrian volunteered. He knew he was dying, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving you alone. He spent every night at the lab mapping his mind, transferring every memory, every secret, every tiny detail of his love for you into the construct. So the man who came home on our anniversary was the construct. Dr. Hartley said we initiated the transfer 2 weeks ago, just as Adrian's physical brain began to fail. The construct has all of Adrian's memories, his habits, his warmth, his emotions. To him, he is Adrian. He doesn't even fully realize he's a synthetic. He just thinks he survived a medical crisis at the lab. But why? I whispered, tears finally breaking free, scalding my cheeks. Why go through all this lie? Why not just tell me? Because the synthetic body is temporary. Clara, Dr. Hartley said, her eyes filled with a heavy professional pity. The technology isn't perfect without a quantum-entangled link to the original host's deep subcortical stem. The synthetic's neural network begins to degrade. The real Adrian has been kept on life support in room 206 to stabilize the construct, but the original body's organs are failing. We have to turn off the life support tomorrow at dawn. The room went completely silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning. Once we pull the plug, Dr. Hartley whispered, the construct, the Adrian, who is waiting for you at home, will begin to lose his cognitive functions. Within 72 hours, his mind will completely unravel. He will sleep and he won't wake up. I stared at Dr. Hartley, my chest tight, the horror of the realization washing over me. Adrian planned the Santorini trip, Dr. Hartley said, so you would be thousands of miles away when his physical body died, and when the synthetic body quietly disappeared or suffered a simulated fatal accident, he wanted you to remember him. Happy, healthy, and loving. He wanted to spare you the agony of watching him die twice, but you came back. I didn't say another word. I turned on my heel and ran. I drove back to our penthouse in a daze, the city lights blurring into long streaks of silver and gold through my tear-filled eyes. When I unlocked the front door, the house was dark. The familiar scent of sandalwood and vanilla greeted me the scent of Adrian. I stepped into the living room. The ghost was there. He was still curled in the corner, but he wasn't looking at the wall anymore. He was looking at me. His pale, translucent face was twisted in, a look of profound, agonizing sorrow. Because I could see ghosts, I had always known they were just residual energy, silent echoes of the dead trapped in the places they loved or feared. But looking at this ghost now, I realized something different. This wasn't just an echo. This was Adrian's actual soul detached from his dying brain-dead body at the medical facility, yet unable to move on. Because a part of him, his memories, his mind, was still tethered to the earth, walking around in a body that wasn't his. Clara. A soft voice broke the silence. I looked toward the hallway. Adrian, the living warm. Adrian stood there. He was wearing his gray lounge pants and a soft t-shirt. He looked tired. His eyes slightly bloodshot, but when he saw me, his face lit up with that familiar heart, melting smile. Darling, you're back. Why didn't you call me from the airfield? He rushed forward, wrapping his arms around me. His embrace was warm. I could hear his heartbeat steady and strong against my ear. It felt so real. It felt like the man I had loved for 20 years. But when I looked over his shoulder, I saw the ghost in the corner rise to his feet. The ghost took a step toward us, his hand reaching out his fingers, stopping just inches from my back, unable to touch me. The ghost's eyes were filled with a desperate, silent plea. I am here. The ghost's silent gaze seemed to say, I am the one who loved you. I stood frozen, caught between two versions of the same man, one made of flesh and memories destined to fade in days, the other, a silent, suffering soul, trapped by his own desperate attempt to protect me. Clara, you're shaking the living? Adrian said, pulling back slightly to look at my face. His hands gently cupped my cheeks, his thumbs wiping away my tears. What's wrong? Did something happen on the flight? I looked into his eyes. They were the exact same shade of deep hazel I had stared into since we were young. The warmth in them was genuine. He didn't know he was a copy. He didn't know he was a clock winding down to its final tick. He only knew that he loved me, and that I was crying. Nothing. I lied, my voice trembling. I forced a smile, though it felt like my face was cracking. I missed you too much. I couldn't stay in Santorini without you. Adrian's eyes softened, a look of pure relief washing over his face. He pulled me close again, burying his face in my hair. I missed you too, Clara. So much. Over his shoulder, the ghost of the real Adrian slowly lowered his hand. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked incredibly, profoundly tired. He sat down on the floor, leaning his head against the wall, watching us with a quiet, heartbreaking resignation. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, tucked into the crook of the living Adrian's arm. His breathing was deep, and even his body radiating a comforting heat. But in the far corner of our bedroom near the closet, the ghost of Adrian sat on the floor, his knees pulled to his chest. For 20 years I had kept my ability to see the dead, a secret from everyone, including Adrian. I had been afraid of being labeled unstable, afraid of the way people would look at me. I could only watch the dead, never speak to them. But tonight, The silence in the room felt too heavy to bear. Slowly, gently, I slid out from under the living Adrian's arm. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and walked over to the corner of the room. I sat down on the cold floor directly across from the ghost. The ghost looked up, his pale eyes widening in surprise as I met his gaze. "I can see you," I whispered, keeping my voice so low it was barely a breath. "I've always been able to see them. I've always been able to see you." The ghost's lips parted, but no sound came out. He reached out a hand, his pale, shimmering fingers hovering over mine. I could feel a faint, icy chill radiating from him, like the draft from a winter window. "Why did you do it, Adrian?" I whispered, tears pooling in my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Did you really think leaving me with a machine, a ghost of yourself, would make it easier?" The ghost looked at the bed where his physical copy lay sleeping. Then he looked back at me. He slowly raised his hand and pressed it against his own chest, then pointed to me, and finally to the sleeping. "Adrian." He didn't have to speak. I understood. He had loved me so much that he couldn't bear the thought of my world collapsing. He had wanted to leave a piece of himself behind to hold me, to comfort me, to make sure I wouldn't have to face the cold, empty penthouse alone. But in doing so, he had trapped himself. His soul couldn't cross over, because his mind, his memories were still active in the construct he was forced to watch his own copy live, the life he had lost. "I'm sorry," I sobbed silently, burying my face in my hands. "I'm so sorry I didn't save you." A faint cold sensation brushed against my hair. I looked up. The ghost was kneeling in front of me, his translucent hand resting gently on my head, ruffling my hair, just the way he used to do when we were younger. His expression was incredibly gentle, devoid of any anger or jealousy. He didn't regret what he had done. Even now, trapped in this liminal space, his only concern was my grief. The next morning the phone rang. It was 7 a.m. Adrian, the living one, groaned and reached for the nightstand, picking up the phone. "Hello." I sat up in bed, my heart stopping. I knew who was calling it. It was the medical facility. It was Dr. Hartley. Adrian listened to the phone for a long moment. His face slowly paled, and the hand holding the phone began to shake. I see. Thank you, Dr. Hartley. I'll be there soon." He hung up the phone and sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "Adrian," I called, out softly, crawling over to him, resting my hand on his back. "What is it?" He turned to me, his eyes wide with a sudden, terrifying confusion. "Clara, Dr. Hartley said, she said there was an incident at the lab. She said my body." "No, that doesn't make sense. She said they had to disconnect the support system." He grabbed his head, groaning in pain. "Why does my head hurt so much? Clara, why can't I remember what I did yesterday? I remember packing your bags, but I don't remember what I did after you left." The degradation had begun. The moment the medical facility disconnected the original Adrian's physical body from life support, the quantum link was starting to sever. The construct's brain was beginning to misfire, the memories starting to leak away like water through clenched fingers. "It's okay," I said, wrapping my arms around him, pulling his head to my chest. "It's okay. Adrian, don't try to think about it. Just breathe." I feel so cold, Clara," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Why is it so cold?" I looked toward the bedroom door. The ghost of the real Adrian was standing there. He looked more solid. Now the gray pallor of his skin softening into a warm, gentle light. He was looking at the living Adrian with an expression of deep, solemn understanding. The physical Adrian in the medical facility was gone. They had turned off the machines. "Let's go for a walk." I whispered to the living Adrian, my heart breaking into a million pieces. "Just you and me, like we used to." "Okay," he murmured, his voice sounding younger, more fragile. "A walk. I'd like that." We walked to the Botanical garden near our penthouse, the same garden where we had sneaked in as students, where he had first told me he loved me, under the canopy of a massive, ancient banyan tree. Adrian's steps were slow and hesitant. He held my hand, but his grip was losing its strength. Every few minutes he would stop and look around, a look of profound confusion on his face, as if he couldn't quite remember where we were, Clara. He said suddenly, stopping under the banyan tree, "Where are we? We're at the Botanical garden." "Adrian," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "The banyan tree. Do you remember the banyan tree?" He whispered, his eyes scanning the branches. I remember a girl. She was wearing a yellow dress. She got her foot stuck in the roots, and I gave her my scarf to wrap around her bleeding ankle. That was me. I smiled, the tears finally spilling over. I was 19. You gave me your gray cashmere scarf, and I got mud all over it. Yes. He smiled. A brief flash of the old bright Adrian returning to his eyes. It was ruined, but you stopped crying. He looked at his own hands, which were starting to look slightly pale, his fingers trembling. Clara, I think I'm going to sleep soon. I'm so tired. I know, sweetheart, I said, guiding him to sit down on the bench under the tree. I pulled him close, letting him rest his head on my shoulder. You can sleep. I'll be right here. You won't be lonely? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Never, I said. You've taken such good care of me. You've loved me so much. It's okay to rest. Now you don't have to carry me anymore. He closed his eyes, his breathing slowing down, becoming shallower and shallower. I looked up, standing just a few feet away, bathed in the soft golden morning. Light filtering through the leaves of the banyan tree was the ghost of the real Adrian. He was no longer pale or gray. He looked exactly as he had on the day of our wedding, vibrant, happy, and whole. He stood there, his hand reached out toward the bench. The living Adrian beside me took one last soft breath. His body relaxed, his head resting heavily against my shoulder. The warmth in his hand slowly faded, replaced by the natural chill of a body that had ceased to function. As the construct peacefully shut down, a soft, shimmering light rose from his chest. The light drifted through the air, floating toward the ghost of the real Adrian. The ghost reached out and caught the light, absorbing it into his chest. His eyes flashed with a sudden, brilliant clarity. All the memories, all the love, all the pieces of his soul that he had mapped into the machine were finally returned to him. He was whole again. The ghost of my husband took a step toward me. He couldn't touch me physically. But as he leaned down and pressed his forehead against mine, I felt a wave of profound, unconditional warmth wash over me. It was a feeling deeper than skin, a connection of the soul that defied death itself. Thank you, his voice echoed in my mind, clear and beautiful. Thank you for seeing me. I will always see you, Adrian. I whispered into the quiet morning air. He smiled, a bright, beautiful smile that I knew would carry me through the lonely years ahead. He took a step back, his form slowly beginning to dissolve into the golden sunlight, fading away into a peaceful, gentle mist. I sat on the garden bench for a long time, holding the quiet, empty shell of the construct, looking at the spot where my husband's soul had finally found his peace. The grief was there heavy and sharp, but for the first time in months, the coldness in my heart was gone. I reached out and touched the silver bracelet around my wrist. The word always. You cool against my skin. I was no longer afraid of the dark, because I knew that love, real love, was the one thing that never truly dies.